Hello and welcome. My name's Kenneth Tharp. I'm a former professional dancer who started their dance journey at the age of 5 with classical ballet before later moving on to contemporary dance. I was a professional dance artist for 25 years as a performer, a teacher, a choreographer, a director. I've been a trustee of the Royal Opera House. I've been chief executive of The Place, UK's premier centre for contemporary dance development, and most recently director of the Africa Centre. I am currently a trustee of Sir Matthew Bourne's company, New Adventures, and of the Chineke Foundation, which runs Europe's first majority Black, Asian and ethnically diverse classical orchestra. I'm also a school governor. Thank you for joining us at the Royal Opera House's Limbury Theatre for this conversation with 6 dancers from the Royal Ballet. I'm delighted to say that I have with me here on my left, Joseph Sissens, Francisco Serrano, Marianna Tsembenhoi, and on my right, Francesca Hayward, Joseph Aumeer and Marcelino Sambé. It's a chance for you to hear directly from the dancers, and it's a chance for them to talk about their dance journeys, their early influences, their role models, but also to reflect on the 2 major things that have shaped the last 7 months: a global pandemic and the murder of George Floyd, which has initiated a global Black Lives Matter movement. It's a chance to discuss how these 2 major events have impacted on the dancers' lives and to see what thoughts they have about where we are now and where we might want to go for the future. This event is part of the ongoing series of Insight events that the Royal Opera House runs, that let you see behind the scenes. And I think before we go any further, I think it's really important that I let you know that this is a conversation that was initiated by the dancers themselves. It's a conversation that they're keen to have. It isn't something that has been foisted upon them. And so my job here this evening is really just to help facilitate that discussion and put the dancers center stage. I've spoken to each one of the dancers one-to-one in preparation for this event, and I'd like to thank them all for giving so generously of their time, their valuable time. I think we're going to have a really interesting and insightful conversation. So let's begin. I'd love to start by asking Francesca just to tell us a little bit about how did you start your dance journey? When? How old were you? Where were you when you started your journey in dance?
I started ballet when I was about 2 or 3 years old. I think I started because my grandparents who were looking after me could tell I was definitely musical. Like when there was music, I would always look really alive and start sort of trying to move around. So on a whim, they kind of decided to try a ballet video, and that was very successful. That was just kind of me sorted for the whole day. I just was glued watching like Sleeping Beauty and Swan Lake and Nutcracker. And I just sort of taken my whole journey has kind of been step by step from there, just because I love it so much with no pressure.
Do you have a particular memory? Can you remember something from that age? Something that stands out?
Yeah, I remember just watching, especially Sleeping Beauty, and seeing all the fairies, and obviously there's so much mime in Sleeping Beauty. And I suppose I have a kind of memory of just kind of understanding what they were saying, even at 3 or 4 years old. I don't know, I never questioned it or thought it looked silly. I really understood what they were saying to each other with their hands and their faces.
Marianna, you also started very young as well. How old were you and where were you when you started your journey?
Yes, I was quite young. I was 3 years old. I started in Kiev, back home. I started because my brother also wanted to dance. Originally, he wanted to do some street dancing, like hip hop and break dance, but they suggested him to try ballet. And my mom also saw that I had so much energy. And I was dancing around our apartment whenever I would hear the music. So she introduced me to ballet as well, and I loved it so much. And this is when I started.
Yeah. Now, one of you comes from a dancing family, Francisco.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you first started talking to me the other day, you kept it quiet, but both your parents were dancers.
Yeah, they were dancers of the Cuban National Ballet for many years, and then they defected to Mexico And then after Mexico, they went to Florida, where I was kind of born there. Yeah, they had a really long and successful career in Sarasota Ballet. I started when I was like 13. I didn't start with my parents. It was kind of just a part of the class going on, and they kind of needed a guy, kind of like the basic, generic kind of story. But after that, my parents kind of took over with like private lessons and all that kind of stuff. And then originally, my mom had the idea of kind of opening a school, and then after that, kind of moved into that. And then I ended up being homeschooled, which I kind of started that career a bit quicker.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Did you have any sense that was there ever any sort of spoken or unspoken pressure that because both your parents were dancers that you would automatically follow in their footsteps?
No, actually, I think when I was a bit younger, they asked me to if I was interested, and I think I kind of said no. Don't really remember it, but I actually played baseball for I think 7-8 years until I was like 12, and then so yeah, there was never like a pressure to do anything. If I didn't want to, they would be fine with it. But as soon as I kind of said yes, I would like to, they kind of really gave their all to it and kind of helped me become the dancer I am now. So
yeah.
It's quite normal that often, particularly men getting into dance, they quite often start because either a sister, a relative, or a friend. And I think Joseph, was that your journey?
Yeah, I mean, I started at 9, and my friend at the time was going to dance school, and one day her mum couldn't take her to the lessons, so my mum took her, and I ended up going, and then, I mean, I watched from the window and saw her kind of doing, the normal ballet class, and the teacher was like, "Oh, we don't have many boys, so why doesn't he just kind of join in for fun?" And I ended up joining in. Yeah, I really loved it, and funny enough, my friend actually quit like the next year, and I continued. So, yeah, I guess since then the journey's kind of continued, and yeah, it's taken me here.
And Marcelino, I know that you didn't start with classical ballet. Tell us about your beginning.
Yeah. So I was very fortunate to be part of this community center where I was born that offered a lot of options, and one of the options, because I was born in this African community, was African dance. So that was something that was always around anyways from when I was very young. And there was this tiny little group of only girls called the Little African Stars. This is a translation from Portuguese. And I was the only boy for a long time. And I started very young, like 4 or 5 years old, and I was kind of the mascot of the group. And there was, I guess, African dance came very naturally, and I felt like I wasn't doing a modality of dance. I was actually just dancing because that's all I would see where I was born. So it was a very natural transition into dance.
Yeah. And Joseph, I remember when we were speaking the other day, I remember you saying to me that actually ballet, when your first encounter with it, you decided it wasn't for you.
Yeah, when I was younger, I hated it. So I started dancing at like around 7, and it was mainly like modern tap, musical theatre, XYZ, and like ballet was like, my mum told me you had to do that to get your technique. And I wasn't very good with discipline and XYZ, and also like I was quite the confident child, and I decided quite early on, as like people know me now, I'm quite like headstrong, and I was like, I don't see anyone that looks like me, so it's not for me.
How old were you when you had that thought?
Probably like, I mean, I was like training in ballet until like probably 10, and I went to Ching Park School for the Performing Arts, and I was mainly there like to edge into musical theatre, and of course like there they have resources like books, videos everywhere, like all of these ballet dancers, and I watched them and didn't see anyone that looked like me, so I was kind of like, this isn't for me. And I'm also from a family like that race was very prevalent growing up, and I grew up with quite the chip on my shoulder, so I decided not to go into it. And then so growing up, like I had like little ribbons in my kitchen. I would put on little shows, little musical theatre shows, and to the point when like my mum would like bash the broom on the ceiling, just like, can you shut up at 7 o'clock in the morning? And I'd be putting on Wicked the musical or something. And then my friend actually, for my birthday, she brought me Carlos Acosta and Tamara Rojo doing Romeo and Juliet at the O2, which came out a few years ago. And I think I always had like an undying love for it. Like I I was saying that I didn't want to do it, but it was always like a little fire inside of me. And then I saw Carlos and saw him with his curly hair and his beautiful brown skin and being celebrated for exactly who he is. And I was like, right, you know what? Like, I can do this. So that's kind of like, from that point on, I then got into White Lodge Summer School, and then this is where I met you, actually, when you taught me. And it's just been all streams ahead since then.
Yeah. This is a question that and anyone can pick up on this. Talking to you, quite a few of you, in particular male dancer amongst you, mentioned Carlos Acosta, but it seemed to have been quite important for you that you did have role models to aspire to, or to make it seem possible. Anyone want to pick up on about who your role models were?
Yeah, I can start.
Marcelino.
So I was quite fortunate to meet Carlos when I was around 10, 11. So in the National Ballet of Portugal, he came over and he was doing Don Quixote, actually, with that company. And I was only a flower boy, like a small little part. And I remember this very specific memory of having him warming up in the studio before his performance, and I started doing some grand pirouettes in front of him to kind of like showing him what I had learned from watching him or something. And I remember no one really took me very serious because they just thought I was just Marcelino being wild, and he actually corrected me really strongly and was really serious about it. And I just thought like, wow, he actually maybe really sees something in me, and he's not just like laughing about it and me falling around. He was really like, put your hips there and your feet. And for me that was an amazing moment of wake up and think like, oh, this is a serious thing, and to be like him, I'm gonna have to work, and to get there is not just do it. You gotta really have like really focus and give it all. And that was something that always stayed with me, that first memory about him. But then after him as well, I started looking and seeing what dance could offer me and offer people that looked like me. And I couldn't see many examples, but one person that really like as well made me believe as well was Eric Voin from Paris Opera. He was someone that really, like, when I first saw, I really, really connected with, just because it felt like he wasn't just the usual image of a strong male black dancer, but he was as well very sensitive, very elegant, and that was something that really connected with me.
Yeah. Marianna, in growing up in Kiev, were there any obvious role models for you, close to hand?
Well, growing up in Eastern European country, there weren't that many black dancers or brown dancers. So, and because I'm still quite young, so when I was young, I had access to the internet. So I was watching videos of different dancers like Mr. Copeland and Carlos Acosta as well. When I was about 10 years old, I realized that I wanted to do ballet professionally. And then many people just were telling me that if you want to build your career and if you want to be equally as able to do, for example, some productions like Swan Lake or Shades in La Baida, you need to move countries. Because if, for example, I stayed in Ukraine or went to Russia, for instance, I wouldn't be able to do as much as the others. So,
and sorry to interrupt, but was that a realization you had for yourself, or did someone say that to you explicitly?
Some of my ballet teachers in my old school, they were telling me this, and some people already in the company in Kiev, they kind of gave me hints about me not being able to do certain parts and roles because I just didn't look like everyone else, so I would stand out from the corps de ballet. And for instance, in the rank, I wouldn't achieve more than a soloist, for example, or something. So I knew that I needed to escape and I needed something different. And seeing Misty Copeland, for instance, she was the principal dancer with ABT. And I knew that out there were places where I would have achieved more than, for example, back home. And I knew I wanted to take it very serious.
Nevertheless, that's quite something to have been told that explicitly, and quite something for a young person to take on.
Yes, I was very young, and it made me mature early. And I realized that I needed to be a few steps ahead of my peers, thinking about my career and how I wanted it to develop.
Before we leave this thing about key influences, Joseph, I was struck when we spoke the other day. You said that it wasn't just dancers who were your role models. You mentioned a musician in particular.
Growing up, like, my mother is white, she's Caucasian, and she's pretty incredible. Like, I grew up in like a village in the middle of Hertfordshire, but she made sure that I had black influences and black music in the house and Bob Marley playing and XYZ, and I learned about my culture that way. And I just remember Nina Simone is a massive one for me, especially when she says, I can't remember the quote exactly, but what is freedom? And it's no fear, and XYZ. And I just really related to that, especially as growing up, I was quite fearful all the time. So to see someone beautiful and brown say that, and to understand, like, she as an artist understands what it is to not, like, she was saying that because she feels fear quite often as well, and she hardly ever feels free. And I just felt like quite at home with that feeling.
Were your fears in relation to anything particular? Were you just of a nervous disposition? What was fueling that?
The prison system is quite prevalent in my family. I watched a lot of the men in my family go to prison, and I was told that I was going to do exactly the same thing. And people in here know that, like, I wouldn't hurt a fly, to be honest, but as a child I was told that that's where I was destined for. And teachers would turn around, especially when my brothers were younger, and say things like, all you have to do is look into his eyes to know he's evil, and stuff like that. So I was taught from a very young age to put on an air. Like, I suppose how I grew up is to realize that if you put yourself here and everyone else around you here, you're safe because you're not a threat. So especially now, like, my coaches and the people in the studio and everything, I say sorry all the time. Like, before I do anything, if I partner a girl, even if I do something well, my instant reaction is to say sorry. And a lot of people get angry with me for it, but it's built up from being a kid and knowing that you need to be sorry all the time for your existence, because all you need is that one person to see you a little bit differently and you're shunned. And not only, it's not irrational. Like, a lot of people would hear this and think, that's irrational, you're fine. But I have experiences to back it up. I've watched it happen to my brothers. I've watched it happen to my family. So, I don't know, that fear has been, this entire pandemic, actually, I've been unpacking that fear, and I feel a lot better now because I understand it. And when you put a name to it and you, like, think about it, you have control over it, XYZ. But it is quite upsetting to know that, like, little Joe at some point decided to put himself here, like, in front of everyone else, because it was safety. No one saw you as a threat. And I think when I think about Nina Simone, I feel like she felt the same way.
Yeah, thank you, Joseph. Marcelino, you, I know, you spoke about a moment in your development before you came to London, when you said you were aware that people started to see you differently, and how important that was to you. Tell us a bit about that.
Well, I guess starting young and coming from, like, as well, like, a background that it wasn't like the usual, and the fact that I had to add so much support as well from my colleagues, and being a bit fostered around and all that, you kind of become identityless. You just become kind of like part of everyone's life, and everyone has an opinion on you. And for a long time, I feel like people really didn't see me as someone that was seriously going to do this and really was going to achieve anything, just because I was very loud, wild child, and I'm glad I went through that. But then what really was special to me was when, obviously, I found my family that really supported me and made me grow, but as well the fact as well that the teachers specifically the directors of the school, really started looking at me with different eyes, and really making me believe that even though I'm different and I come from a place that might not be the usual, I could do it because I had the talent and I had the work ethic. And for me, that was like was such an important moment to really have that that guidance. And that for me is one of the most important points of my life, where I kind of like focused on people that really were like behind me, and kind of made my past work for me, you know?
Thank you. Does anyone else want to pick up? I'm really interested just to explore a little bit further that notion of either any particular hurdles or barriers that you may have faced, or those moments, or a moment where you had a revelatory moment like that, where you felt you overcame something. Anyone else want to pick up on anything like that?
I mean, to be honest, I'd never had something like that happen to me. I was lucky enough to have like my parents, my dad, mixed race man as well. He always kind of spoke to me and say like, it doesn't matter how you look. I mean, they come from Cuba, so obviously there's a mix of people that it's just amazing. So he says it doesn't matter what you look like, as long as you have a passion for something, you go for it and don't let anyone kind of stand in your way. So I've always had him kind of like support me in that, and it was something that I needed to hear, I think. Especially like in this industry when you don't see a lot of, brown skin and curly hair, it's not a big thing. So I think I really appreciated that, hearing that growing up, especially when I started ballet.
I guess it's amazing how even one person just giving you that that gentle support can be enough to give you, to have that. And Francesca, I mean, I think you seem to have had an inner confidence and not had any doubts about your ability to step forwards.
I've definitely had my doubts about me as a dancer, for sure, but I think it's interesting now, I think, hearing all your stories as well. I grew up watching the Bolshoi and the Mariinsky, mainly because that was the most available ballet videos, and a lot of Margot Fonteyn and Rudolf Nureyev. And I somehow wasn't aware that none of those people looked like me. I just wanted to do that. And I suppose it's only at certain points in my career, for example, sort of my first interview for a newspaper where they suddenly said to me, "Oh, and how do you feel about being a mixed race dancer?" And I was just really taken aback. And I think I remember I said to the journalist, I said, "Oh, well, how do you feel to have blonde hair and blue eyes?" Like, it feels like that for me. Obviously, I'm in no way not proud to be where, and come from where I come from and everything like that. But I really honestly feel like I have been always judged on my abilities and my talents, and been very lucky to be surrounded by people who have never put, shown me that there are any other barriers other than, having confidence in myself.
Yeah.
I feel very fortunate, obviously, but yeah.
Yeah. Joseph, anything you'd like to add?
Actually, I wanted to reflect on getting into ballet school and just that direct hurdle. I come from Southeast London, and going from an area that I went to a local comprehensive school for year 7, halfway through year 7, and being in that environment with people that look like me all the time, that was very normal for me and very comfortable. And then going to ballet school, which of course, was everything that I wanted at that time, it was different though. Seeing people that didn't look like me, and kind of having that realization like, oh, do I need to kind of pretend to be someone that I'm not? And it's interesting, when I would go back home, I would see friends and they would tell me that I was sometimes maybe a bit too white for them, like as a joke. And then when I would go, not too white, I'm too black for them, and too white, sorry. And then I would go back to ballet school and be mainly with my white friends, and they would say to me, "Oh, like, wow, you've really been like home," just like the accent change. So I don't know, I found myself in this middle grounding, trying to kind of fit both the boxes, which is odd at that age. And yeah, I guess now I'm happy I've gotten to a point that over time I've become more comfortable in, where I come from, and I've been able to reflect on my British side and my Cameroonian side. And it's been my job to really find both the spirit in both of them. Yeah.
let me turn back to Joseph again for a minute, because I'm just seeing a parallel. When we spoke, you talked about going to bike lodges, and you talked about, I don't want to put the words in your mouth or say it for you, but you talked almost like there being two worlds. A sense of, one world at White Lodge and another world elsewhere.
That's a good question. I'm not sure that, well, like definitely. I mean, like I said, I watched the brutal effects of institutional and like face-to-face racism on my brothers and sisters. So when I'd go to White Lodge or Tring especially, I'd be in this bubble of like pretty middle class happiness, everything is fine, and then I'd go visit my brother inside, and you'd see that side of things and how that had affected him, and how like an upbringing of being like spit on on the street and all of that stuff plays a mental part in how someone grows up. And people end up becoming the aggressor. They end up becoming the thing that they tell you that you are, because you're just so angry. And I feel very fortunate to have had the leg up that I had to come out of the place that I was in, but I watched my family go through it. So I guess I grew up with quite a bit of shame and quite a bit of imposter syndrome and real guilt, because not that I felt like I was the one that got away, but like it just took its toll, and I watched it take its toll, and I felt othered, and I still feel that way sometimes.
Has anyone else, that sense of feeling othered, has anyone else experienced that in a similar or different way?
Well, my first audition to the National Conservatoire in Lisbon was a huge shock. It was my first time in Lisbon, central Lisbon, so I had never been. And first of all, the first thing that I noticed when I got to center of Lisbon was the beautiful architecture and just all new world opening up to me. And I was just like, wow, this is great. And it felt really like exciting. But then coming into the school, I was very aware that I was probably the only black student around me. And I did have some examples ahead. I had an incredible dancer, Portuguese dancer, Tel Moreira, that was a few years ahead of me. And I always had someone to look up to because he was doing so well as well. And he was such a star in the school. And he came from the same place as me. He was dark-skinned and gorgeous dancer. I knew that it was possible. So I was very fortunate to always have these amazing people close to me for me to like aspire to be. So that was a great moment. But I did remember being in my ear and being this radical image, almost like this unusual character in amongst these very middle class, very gorgeous young kids. And I did feel always a bit like different, but and that what you guys were saying about like going home and coming back and having to put almost like a character. Yeah. But I kind of accepted that from a very young age. I accepted that that's what I had to do to achieve what I wanted to achieve. And I knew that there are things you have to sacrifice to really like, get your leg up and move forward. And that was just part of me becoming ballet dancer and me training. It was the same thing, arriving at school, behave differently, work hard as hell, and then you'll be accepted. I always felt like that. Although I never had to think about it, I feel like that's how it naturally felt like.
Yeah. Well, now listen, I wasn't sure when to bring this up, but something I did touch on my conversations with each of you, and I thought maybe now's the time, which is around hair. Now, when I mentioned that word, you're all smiling. When I mentioned that word to a couple of you, your first words were, "Oh my God," with that sense of, okay, where do we begin? This is going to be a long conversation. We probably don't have a huge long time to discuss it, but how has that thing of hair, afro hair, curly hair, how has that affected you? It may have affected some of you more than others. When has that been an issue?
Sorry, I'm talking again, but
no, please go ahead.
Sorry. So I have, like this actually was quite interesting because when I joined the company, my hair was always like a bit of a question of how is it going to look and how am I going to like make sure that it looked kept and not too wild, because obviously doing all these classical productions, you need to be aware of like how you're going to fit into it. I felt like it. But then as well, I was so fortunate from the beginning that the director, Kevin O'Hare, even when I was stepping into roles, for example, Nephew, and Nephew was known to have this golden hair, and that design was scrapped. So like when I was doing it, and that for me was such a moment of like, I thought like, wow, I'm creating my own space in this building, and it really is becoming like a more inclusive and more, because I did think, will I ever be able to play that character? And there are still characters that I wonder if I will play, because they do have these iconic icy blonde wigs, for example, the prince in the Nutcracker. I wonder when I get to do that, I hope I do, I wonder if I will, what they're going to do with the design, because obviously we are used to seeing these incredible, and not everyone suits it. I feel like maybe my skin tone wouldn't suit like an icy blonde wig. Maybe it would, but, and maybe we should do it and just see what the response is. But those are questions that I ask, and I feel like we all feel the same way when we were looking at these incredible Ashton and Macmillan works that have these incredible elaborate wigs that are blonde and very white person hair. And I did think for a long time, but I feel like our job is to, you know, put our statement into it, bring it to now, bring it. And I feel like Frank has done a lot of these roles, and she always suits the look as it is, because you could put like a vase of flowers in her hair, she'll look great. But it has been like a bit of a journey, and even for other colleagues as well that have the similar hair, sometimes it can be a bit tricky with haircuts and all. Yeah, not too modern, especially because try not to get too much of an angled and situated, because if you're doing like mid-century ballets as well, you need to be aware of that. So there's always been a bit of a sensitive issue.
Yeah.
For me personally.
If you came up with one of the extreme shape-ups with zigzags, yeah.
But that's what I mean. I always wanted to do these things, and I always wanted to dye my hair in different colors and stuff. But I do know that this is my job, and I have to, like, you know, play it by the book, I guess.
Yeah. Anyone else got any hair comments or stories?
Is it all right if yeah. I think when, and this isn't just this company, I've spoken to plenty of dancers around the world, and not even dancers, just people in fashion, film, all of this stuff. There is a lack in not only black designers, because of course, like I get that. I'm not sure if it's the same as ballet, like when people panic because there aren't many black young dancers in there, so they can't get them. I'm not sure whether that's the case, but also in my experience as a dancer, designers do not condone, they don't think about the fact that I might be a part of the company. So my issue isn't so much our company as general, it's the people that come in from the outside that haven't considered that there might be people of color in there to condone for. And I have had some experiences when they had that, and I don't want to say microaggressions because I don't want to minimalize it, because I feel like that doesn't give it enough power as it had over me, as like the breakdown that happened to me because I felt so othered. But yeah, like aggressions when they don't realize that they're actually really offending you by saying that you stand out on X, Y, Z. And I think just makeup departments and stuff could do that better. And we've had plenty of conversations recently, and our like makeup department and our wig department have really come up. Like we even have little back cues for Manon that are little afro hair and stuff like that stuff. But that stuff matters.
I know.
It's like,
I must say it really changed and started picking up when you joined the company. I feel like you really voiced it and said it in a very nice way, because for the longest time designs would come out for the new ballet and it would be slick hair, and of course I want to have slick hair. I would love to, but it's impossible really to get my hair to be sleek. So things have changed, and definitely like we are moving forward. But I do wonder what other companies, other countries are doing about that, because that's something that kind of gets you a bit nervous about it.
Yeah. I mean, if I may be permitted to make one comment myself, which is, I think I relate to the idea, you know, through my own journey of growing up and in lots of small ways, constantly feeling as though bits of the world were designed without you in mind. A bit as you said, Joseph, you know. And each one of those things may be in itself quite small. But a couple of years ago, I was having a conversation with one of the co-founders of the Black British Business Awards, Sophie Jandalka. And I remember her saying to me very clearly, but what you have, you know, because sometimes when it's those small things, you think, well, do I say anything? Because, you know, I don't want to be the person that's making a fuss again. or to be seen to be. The person's always got something to complain about. But she said what you have to remember is that those those microaggressions, it's like water. That there's a drip effect, and the accumulative effect of those is that you can end up carrying a psychic load. And so, yes, while each individual thing may be relatively small, one shouldn't underestimate the impact that those things can have over time. I'm going to think about a segue to the next bit of the conversation, and I suddenly remember that I've forgotten to show our viewers something I was going to. This was partly an illustration because of the fact that when you've been talking about your influences, when I was speaking to you one-to-one, many of you talked about how you went on YouTube and you'd go on the internet and you'd find this. Well, I'm so old that I didn't have that when I was growing up. So what I had instead was the Dancing Times, another dance magazine called Dance and Dances, and these were monthly publications which you'd wait for avidly so you could look at the next set of pictures. And it was the pictures more than anything, not the words, yes, but mainly the pictures. But I also, and this is my dirty secret, I became the owner at a young age of several of these Princess Tina ballet albums. And this is one of them from, I think it's the early 1970s. And what I can show you if I open it up is here are some fantastic pictures of the Royal Ballet. Well, actually, here you have Alvin Ailey. So some of the few pictures of black dancers I saw, but rarely classical dancers, if any. And if I turn the page here, we have dancers at a gathering. And there are some fantastic names here, but including David Wall, Rudolf Nureyev, Laura Connor, Ann Jenner, Lynn Seymour, Antoinette Sibley, Michael Coleman, Anthony Dow, Jennifer Kelly, Rudolf Nureyev, David Wall, Monica Mason. What a cast. And I looked at those pictures time and time again, and I think I had the feeling that if I looked at them intently enough, I would somehow absorb all the technical skill and all the mastery that was sort of embodied in them. By sheer coincidence, if I turn the page here, you'll see there are a couple of black dancers on this page, and this is called the Ballet of Today. This wasn't ballet. This was actually a company called London Contemporary Dance Theatre, and it happens to be the company that I joined and started the first 13 years of my career with. So there you have it. So, Princess Tina Ballet Book put me in good stead at the start of my career. It gave me my inspiration before YouTube came along. Well, listen, we've already sort of, in a way, quite seamlessly started to talk about things to do with identity. We've touched on hair. We've talked about microaggressions. Look, I guess it's an obvious thing to say, but two major things have happened in the last 7 months. The first of them being a global pandemic, and the second of them being this global Black Lives Matter movement. I know that when the pandemic struck and we were all sent home, one of my very first, I think in the first few days, I started thinking about what the impact would be on artists, and especially on dancers, as an art form close to my heart. So I really want to ask you, what was your initial response to just having your day-to-day routine cut short instantly? Who wants to pick up on that?
Frank.
Well, I went from getting ready for a Swan Lake debut, to being, at the time I was meant to be doing my first 2 frates, like the week later, like 1 week into lockdown, I was sat on the sofa thinking, I'll be doing Act 3 right now. So that was strange, but I feel fortunate personally to be healthy and that my family was healthy. Those were my biggest concerns. I realized it was much bigger than me and that the bigger picture was more important. But I think the silver linings I found to lockdown have definitely been, I think as dancers, we sort of always feeling guilty for not doing enough, for not working hard enough, and all that was kind of taken away. And we got this opportunity to really be like real people without the guilt, So for me, that was something that I really sort of tried to enjoy for as long as possible.
Yeah, I mean, when it first started, we had none of us, I think, had any idea of how long this was going to last. Mm-hmm. I mean, I know at work we closed the office for a couple of weeks, Wasn't even sure if that was an overreaction to begin with, and then of course here we are all these months later. Yeah, who else?
Well, the whole time in the beginning, I felt like a huge sense of rest and healing because our seasons are grueling and it's a lot of work, and you then start realizing by the third week how much distress you and how much stress you under and how much pressure you put into yourself, and suddenly I started really reading what was happening inside and really trying to have retrospective, and that was such an incredible time as well to understand how much I actually really truly love it and how fleeting this career really is, and how little you feel comparing to this massive, your life, I guess, the path that you are taking. And for me, that was this was a huge struggle in the beginning. By the third, fourth week, I stopped laughing because in the beginning I was like, sending videos to my friends, go like, look, I've been in the sofa for 3 hours. And then by the third week, I was like, okay, wow, this is not going on. And then, of course, other things started happening around the world, and that made me. Can you imagine, like, you lost your identity as a dancer, and then as well, like, the world starts really like changing, not changing, but like really being aware of how little you really are, how little you really matter, and that for me was like scary. It was a hard time.
Yeah, absolutely. And over here wants to pick up. Marianna, how was it for you?
Because you just graduated as well, so it must have been so...
Yeah, so it was my last year with the school, the most important year in the upper school. But as Marcelino said about healing, I got injured before the lockdown. So, and it was a little bit of a tricky injury because it was just a severe inflammation in my hip muscles. But at the same time, I just could not carry on dancing, so I had to stop completely. The only thing I was able to do is some Pilates exercises and strength and conditioning programs, but that was it. And for a dancer, just getting injured, it can be very frustrating seeing the others, especially because we were in the preparation for end-of-year shows in the Limburg Theatre and on the main stage at the Opera House here. Just seeing everybody else getting ready, rehearsing repertoire was a little bit painful.
Of course.
Since it was my first serious injury as well. And also not knowing how long the recovery would take and just what is going to happen next. How quickly I could recover and step into dancing. So,
what kind of support did you have to help you through then?
So our healthcare team at school, they are brilliant, and they help very much not only to recover from an injury physically, but also keeping strong mentally, because I think mentality when you get injured is very important. Just keep telling yourself that you're not going to be injured forever. This is just this period of time when everything happens for a reason, and probably now you worked so hard and you got injured for a reason. Maybe you need mental break, maybe your body just needs a bit of break and recover. And usually after the injury you come back even stronger because you have this time to work on things that you never had time before. Because we're always busy with classes and rehearsals, just from an early morning till the evening, and then you just get so tired, and you don't have just this time to go to the Pilates studio or to the gym, do a little bit more of cardio and just some strength and exercises. So then it was very important for me to go into the lockdown thinking that this is the right moment for me to heal, and as much as I can to work on things I didn't have time before. And the school we kept contact via Zoom as well. I had my Pilates sessions, S&C sessions. Everybody was very supportive. My family supported me very much as well, because my brother is a ballet dancer as well. So he also knew how important it was to mentally keep strong, and resilience is a big part of our job as well, I think.
Francisco, when we spoke the other day, you also, I know you spent the latter part of the lockdown in Florida.
I
at
did,
home.
yeah.
But you also said you'd had brilliant support.
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole lockdown situation you kind of ask yourself, like, you know, what's important to you, who's important to you, you know, that support system. And that kind of came out, you know, with who you spoke to every day and who you felt comfortable with. And definitely my family, my girlfriend. It was just, you know, having those people around you is what, you know, is what makes you you and makes you happy. So it was nice to have and feel that that kind of help, even if you think you didn't really, like, you know, want it or need it. It was nice to have those people around. And
tell me a bit about the professional support that you had.
Oh, actually, I was actually going through an injury as well. I had a little bit of a problem with my knee, and in the Opera House they did Zoom meetings every week, private, like, coaching and gym sessions, ballet coaching. So really the Opera House kind of did everything they could to help, which was amazing, especially in that kind of hard time.
And didn't you say they sent you dance liner, or Marley as you call it?
Yeah, everyone got a stretch of quite big piece of Marley, I have to say. So it was, yeah, they really looked after us, I have to say.
Thank you for looking at.
Yeah, exactly.
for anyone,
sponsorship.
Just for anyone watching at home who might not understand the significance of that, just explain why that was important and necessary.
Oh, I mean, I was taking class on carpet, so it was a bit, uneven, really soft. It was just not what we're really used to. And after we got the Marley, I still put it on the carpet, but just the feeling of that ballet floor and, like, ballet shoes was just kind of home again in that sense, which was amazing and really necessary, especially after the 6 months that we spent, you know, off.
Yeah.
So.
And Francesca, you were in a slightly different position. I think at the start of lockdown, you'd been filming, hadn't you?
The year before, yeah.
Oh, the year before.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but
And
it kind of prepared me.
Yeah, tell us a bit more about that. Yeah.
And the year before, so I suppose, well, from 2018, like September to probably March 2019, I was on a film set for all that time, and I very much thought that when I started...
Which film?
Cats.
In case anyone at home didn't know.
And when I went into that filming schedule, I really thought that I could be balancing doing rehearsals at the Opera House and then even maybe be performing kind of when we started filming, and then I knew I might have to start when we were full on filming. And very quickly I was just told no, I was not allowed to come to the Opera House at all. And honestly, I have always sort of prided myself on being a really dedicated dancer, but not being like what we call a bunhead, which I suppose is like a ballet nerd or ballet geek. You know, I'm not obsessed. I don't go home ever and watch ballet videos, and I don't, you know, pride myself on being a ballerina on the street or anything. You know, I can be normal and real. But it really shocked me actually how much I struggled having everything I knew, like everything about the theatre and ballet just literally taken away from me so suddenly. Like, I really struggled. So I think that definitely prepared me for the lockdown, and I feel selfish saying it, but everyone was going through it with me, and it was for, you know, like I said, a much bigger reason. And, you know, I could talk to everyone. We were all feeling the same. We all kind of went through similar highs and lows. Like, you know, this is great. This is fantastic. Okay, I'm a bit depressed this week because I'm trying to do class in my kitchen and I'm just kind of want to give up, you know? So we all went through these highs and lows together. So that really helped this time round.
Did you feel that? I mean, look, you know, my distant memories of dancing, but, you know, that physiological thing of just, you know, moving through the space with velocity, covering space, eating up space, sweating. I mean, it's, yeah, I guess if you work hard enough, you can build up a sweat in your kitchen, but it's not the same, is it? No. I can imagine that must have had quite a profound impact on all of you in different ways. I'm just going to do a quick time check, see where we are. Okay. Any last thoughts just about you know, the physical aspect or the physical and mental aspects of dealing with lockdown, or shall we sort of just move into the last bit of our discussion?
I guess it kind of connects with the next bit of discussion.
Well, it does, and I think you articulated it very well a minute ago, Marcelino, when you said, look, in a way, it wasn't just the fact that we had a pandemic and dealing with that. This was then on top of that came this other huge thing. So this was, who wants to talk about how it affected them, the Black Lives Matter?
What I must say is that obviously being in that state of mind already, like really kind of like devastated. And then when what happened to George Floyd for me was such a huge wake-up call, not just because I knew that it was going to be so important for all of us, and I knew that it was such an important moment, but as well because he made me put into perspective everything I had gone through in my career and my position and how lucky I really am and how privileged I am. And that really made me reconsider what all my choices, how I have been, have I been doing enough? Have I been really aware? And all of what we just talked about, like my path and every day went through everything that I got through, and I realized how really fortunate I really am. And what I had to do is abstract myself from my personal experience in life and really focus on the wider picture. And that's what I kept saying to everyone. It's not even a question or about like if you think that it exists or it doesn't exist. Racism exists, and you might not experience yourself, but it's everywhere. And if you open your eyes really widely outside your own experience, it's everywhere. It's huge. It's microaggressions. It's kids not really like Joe, families and kids not really being in a space where they can really grow with the same opportunities. And it's everywhere. And I just suddenly was at home, had all this time to do all this research, started listening to a lot of people, having phone calls and stuff. And this was like the most awakening and most painful experience to go through, along with the situation we were already having. And for me, it was a double depressing but super a moment of huge growth, because I will never walk around on this earth with the same way that I did before this all happened. And I think that it's a shame that George Floyd's life and many other black people have gone, but it really has taught me so much. It really has given me so much food for thought. And now I'm going to guide myself around this world differently. It's been inspiring.
Yeah, I think it was definitely an intense month, especially once that started. It was.
Were you in America?
A bit.
Yeah.
I was here.
Okay.
At the beginning, but then soon, I think maybe a week later, I ended up going home, and I think in the U.S. people took it a lot differently. Obviously, people were hurt, and not only physically but emotionally, especially after the whole the protests. They started to kind of show their aggression in different ways. Maybe some that weren't really the best way to show your aggression, but I guess people had to express themselves the way they wanted to kind of get what they wanted to say out. I think a lot of people were kind of just suppressed, and they needed some way, one form of just saying like, I need you to listen. I need some people to like see what we're going through. And it's sad what's happening, and the whole protest and many lives lost already. But the thing is, you kind of look at it. It could have been that he could have died, and it could have just passed along, and
like
nothing
so many others,
would have happened.
Many others for so many years.
Like it's happened exactly like it's happened so many times before. So it was not the best timing. Obviously, like it would never have been a good timing, but it had to be done. So yeah.
Can I interrupt? I think it was. There is never a good time for this, obviously, but I think the fact that we were all able to take it in properly with the time to, I think, is what's really made the global shift. The fact that I was spending a lot of time on my phone as it was, and that it was right there, and the fact that it was filmed, and it really. It wasn't just another news story that you read about. It was right there. You saw it. Yeah. You witnessed it.
Yes, I guess the fact that our daily lives had been interrupted, in a way there was no escaping, nor should there be, but and there was more opportunity to reflect. If I was to be
mischievous. I would say sometimes perhaps people think of ballet as being operating a little bubble that's separate from the rest of the world. I'm not saying that's true. I'm not saying I believe that. I'm just saying some people might. I know that some people have thought like that. It's clear to me from my conversation with you that this whole agenda means a lot to you and has impacted a lot. But what I would like to explore a little bit is just how has that affected your life as dancers in the company? You know, does it sit over there as something separate, or is it actually changing your thoughts in the workplace?
I think
Joseph.
I think we had a really interesting conversation, and you said to me, because I feel very strongly about ballet in general, and this isn't just the Royal Opera House, this is ballet, and it's the stories we tell, and it's the voices we give time to. And there are hardly any black voices out there. That's point blank, like, honesty. And you said, interestingly enough, like, it's kind of like the government, like, decolonizing the curriculum. And for example, we have certain ballets out there that lend themselves to educating us on a different experience than the Caucasian experience. But what they actually do is they perpetuate serious stereotypes that are really harmful, and then those people that you are representing do not come to the theatre. They just don't, because you're offending them. You're offending them by thinking, and this is the thing. I don't think people are overtly racist. I'm not calling anyone out. Like, that's the thing. We all have our own unconscious bias. Even us sat here, we have an unconscious bias that we all have to own up to. And that's what we need people to do, is you need to, like, share the stage in that respect to those voices and those stories that are never told. Like, because if we think about it, they have never actually been told. How many stories out there? And I just think it has a massive effect on especially, like, young black girls. Like, I'm going to be very honest right now, and if we look on this lineup, we are pretty light-skinned. So a dark black girl, even watching this insight right now, doesn't see herself. And I'm saying the effect of me watching Carlos, and to pick up that, like, because we are talented, and I would have lost out on all of this talent if I hadn't have decided to do so. And who do they have? And if we don't have those black dancers ready, we at least need to tell their story, and that poses collaboration. There are so many amazing companies around the world, such as Ballet Black, such as Alvin Ailey, such as Complexions, that have been doing this for years and years. And this is the thing when we talk about Black Lives Matter. Like, interestingly enough, we always say over the last few months, and it wasn't the last few months. It wasn't even begin with Trayvon Martin. It didn't begin with Breonna Taylor. It didn't even begin with the Central Park Five. It began way before that. And people have been asleep for 30 years, and now suddenly racism exists. And I find that offensive. So I think it's, going back to what you said, it's our opportunity and it's our responsibility as an arts organization, and all arts organizations around the world, I'm speaking directly to all of them, is to decolonize your curriculum and to come up with different ideas, and to just be, and I want to say radical, but it's not radical. You know, this hashtag, Black Lives Matter, we're not saying we're the only people that matter. We're not saying that. We're just asking to matter as well. So it's not radical. I'm just asking to be welcomed into your space. And I think, yeah.
You stunned everyone into silence there, Joseph.
Sorry.
No.
See, again, I automatically, do you know what I mean? But that's the black experience. If I could sum up the black experience, my initial reaction to sharing my truth, that's my life, and my initial reaction is to go, sorry. I think that's,
So
yeah.
you made a number of very, very important and bold comments there. This sense of decolonizing, okay, in this case perhaps not the curriculum, but is it decolonizing the repertoire? Some of that started a little bit, hasn't it? Am I right in thinking that some of the classic dances in Nutcracker have been re-choreographed or are being re-choreographed?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I'll take this on as well. But I have to be very honest as well, and I do have to say, like, the Royal Ballet and our administration team and our director and stuff is opening up the floor for us to all have these discussions. And I'm really grateful for them doing so, because that's the only way it can change. So those types of actions, like changing the Chinese dance that was very offensive into something that can not offend Chinese people while they're coming to watch the show, is worth it, if you know what I mean. So I think we're all very grateful for that space. And even this space, like, if we just look around and just see how beautiful it is to see, like, 6 beautiful brown people sat here in this Royal Opera House, like, this is a moment, and I don't know, I'm just very grateful for people enabling this.
What else would you like to see change? What needs to change? How can you be part of that change? What do you feel was within your power to make happen?
I'll go.
Yes, please.
Well, I think for me, the last few months, I didn't realize how much it was going to consume me. I didn't realize how much I was going to be constantly thinking about everything, how much I was going to start questioning myself. And I was thinking about the bigger picture in my life, in the world, and I realized a lot, yes, I've experienced more racism than I thought, because I think when that happens, I squash it and I rise above and I think, oh, it's okay. And I maybe mentally prepare for the next time at an airport or when someone asks me where I'm from and all that. You know, those are small things. And then obviously I was thinking, okay, but how do I apply this to my world of ballet? And asking so many questions there. And asking big questions to myself. Like, I have wondered, and then I had the thought, what if my skin was darker? What if my hair was wilder? You know, like, what would my career have been? And I hadn't thought about it. And I think it was really questioning as well. Yeah, I needed to do a lot more educating of myself than I realized. And I'm still doing that.
Yeah.
I guess it's such a learning process, isn't it? Especially when you're in an environment like this, where you are so focused and so determined that sometimes, like, when you open the doors to what's really happening outside, it's frightening. But as answering your question, I do believe that the change that needs to be done, and I truly believe this, is recruiting. On the recruiting, like, I was so fortunate that I had this psychologist that saw me, and she just really saw something in me, and she didn't even think of how I looked or where I came from. She just said, you're gonna have to do dance. But, like, so many kids miss that opportunity. I have a very close friend of mine that has an incredible story, and I hope he doesn't mind me sharing with everyone, but his recruiting story was insane. He comes from a family of Rastafarians. He had dreadlocks, and he was this incredible talent, and he still is a super incredible talent. And he was part of the young kids. I don't know what the
Chance to Dance, I think.
Like maybe, or JAs, I don't know. I'm not sure. It's not in this country. But yeah, like the little kids ballets, and he obviously was the most talented dancer in that group. Like, hands down, beautiful legs, beautiful feet, very romantic quality, just something unlike anything. And it was known that he was actually definitely going to get invited to come to the audition to join this massive school, and he wasn't called. All his colleagues were called apart from him, and he had this massive head of dreadlocks, and he was incredible. Unfortunately, he got lice, and he had to shave all his head off, and the auditions had passed, so he thought he would not join the school and everything. And then the director was walking around and saw him doing a class with his shaved head, and that day he got a scholarship to join this massive school. And then for me, that just is the perfect example of how such a little thing could have just exterminated this incredible talented dancer. And for me, that really raises a lot of, when I was told this story, I was like, wow, how many more kids are going through that? Kids that come in with big afros and they don't look right, and people are just so quick to judge because they won't fit in, because they are just too different. And then how many more people are going through that same process? And that's questions that we all need to be asking, and open more space for kids that come from all different backgrounds, with all different looks, with all different experiences, because they all bring something new. And that change of decolonizing the repertoire and really bringing new stories can start by that child that is this small and this wild and this different, because they can bring something completely different to this art. And I truly believe that. And the way we're recruiting these kids from the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, if you look in the broader workplace, I think recruitment is clearly an issue, but I think there have been plenty of diversity schemes that haven't worked. And it's one thing to bring people in through the door, but whether they stay or not is another thing. And I think that is about changing the culture and making sure the environment is such that those people feel they can thrive and be happy and fulfilled within that. I mean, listen, you've raised one thing about the repertoire, and Joseph, I think, this would be the same, I think, in film or in theatre. It's not just about who's on stage, and that's a huge part of it, but it's also, who the authors are, who the producers are, who's deciding which stories are told. But how do you think that should be addressed? Either in this specific building or more generally within the ballet world?
Oh, that's interesting.
It's a big question.
Yeah. Well, I guess probably maybe I think it shouldn't really matter whether the person is white or black or brown. The voices should be heard no matter what your skin color is, and the opportunities should be given to people that have passion to what they do, and if they have an idea and a goal, and if they can create something beautiful, I think the chance at least should be given to the person, and to choreographers and composers, and everybody should have equal right to be heard and seen, and the room to create as well, because there is also slight pressure, I think, everywhere in many form of arts. Am I right? Will I fit? Or how people will see me, and just all sort of things. But, yeah.
I think it was you, Joseph, forgive me if my old brain hasn't remembered correctly, but I think it was you that when we were talking the other day on this, you said there needed to be more people, brown, black people, at the front of the room. I think was the phrase you used.
Definitely. I think that's the most important thing, having those people at the front of the room and as leaders and as inspiration to show you where you can get to. And actually specifically going back to, like the repertoire and what, I'd like to see. And I thought it could be a great idea for us to, collaborate with more designers, 21st century designers, and like Joe touched on, equal storytelling and equal narratives. And I think I mean, other than you, again, like Joe, I have only been taught by you as a black man throughout my whole career getting into the Royal Ballet. So the idea of collaborating with more people, like Alvin Ailey, like Ballet Black, going there and, having that sense of community like we do now, like we're sharing now, and learning more about different people's stories, because some people's stories even here I don't really know. So this has been a real time for me as well. So the idea of collaborating and reaching out to different companies and actually building up a community together, like black people have. Black people have that sense of community always. You feel it no matter what, which is incredible. It's like you're my brother, you're my sister, regardless even if you're not.
Does it matter? How much does it matter to you who's in the audience? I mean, if it's a full house, does it matter to you who's there or who isn't there? Marcelino's nodding his head.
I do. I really do. There's such a huge sense of when you're doing a classical or a more contemporary piece, and even not just like race, but we're talking about as well, but bringing a younger crowd as well. That's just such a different vibe, and I feel like if you could bring that to more diversity, even reach out to more diversity. I mean, but I guess that's something that will take a long time to really convince that it's worth coming and seeing a story that doesn't really connect to what you've experienced. And I feel like that's the hard thing about that, diversifying an audience, isn't it? It's a hard question, isn't it? How do you really broaden that?
If I can give you one example
Please do.
of something that has, which I can talk because I know that firsthand. I'm acting chair of Chineke Foundation, and their orchestra had its inaugural performance in September 2015 at the Queen Elizabeth Hall. And when I first came to London at 18, I would go to classical concerts by myself because I love music. And I wasn't really looking at who was on stage because it was already so familiar to me for there not to be people who looked like me on stage. So I didn't even question it. But this concert in September 2015, first of all, in the Queen Elizabeth Hall, it's a big venue, it was sold out. Secondly, you walked into the auditorium and you looked at who was there and you thought, my God, it looks like London for the first time.
Nice.
In a concert. I'd never seen that. Thirdly, when they walked on stage, there were about 60 plus players from at least 28 different countries. There were people with grey in their beard like me, but I spoke afterwards to a mother and son, and one of the players was a 15-year-old schoolboy who was on a scholarship at Wellington College, played 5 instruments, was only brought in 3 days before the concert to replace someone, I think, and apparently he was note perfect by the day of the concert. So we're talking about phenomenal talent. When they walked on that stage, you could hear the audience gasp, myself included, because it was like seeing something for the first time. This sea of black and brown faces walking on to play a concert. And actually, we gave them a standing ovation before they'd even played a note. Then most importantly, their playing was brilliant. They finished with a Beethoven Symphony, number 7, of course, proving that they could do the classic rep and do it, as well as anyone else. They also played music by 3 black composers, 2 of them dead, 1 living. Names that you should have heard of, and we're starting to hear of now. And if you or anyone at home hasn't seen that recent BBC4 documentary, Black Classical Music: The Forgotten History, please watch it. It's so insightful. That orchestra. There's a senior orchestra and there's a junior orchestra. Junior orchestra have just been on Britain's Got Talent recently. It's starting to literally change the face of classical music. And, sitting on seeing a group of 7-year-olds sitting on the floor of the ballroom floor of the Royal Festival Hall, looking at the junior orchestra, people who are maybe just, a little bit older than them, but not so much older that it's out of touch. Incredible. So I'm going to say, look, classical music and classical ballet have a lot in common. Yeah. They've both been very homogenous for hundreds of years. If they can start to turn it around in 5 years, then it gives me hope that there's no reason why it shouldn't and couldn't happen in the classical ballet world. Yeah. Listen, I think we're almost out of time, and so I think I will give you a few seconds warning just so I take you complete by surprise, but I sort of want to ask you if there's any final thing that you want to share that I just wish I had the chance to say that. We'll go around. And also, I think I'd like you maybe just to also finish by saying, what's the one thing that you think you'll take away from this conversation? As fresh as it is, but hearing each other, and just from the way this conversation has gone, I'm sure it's not going to be, I hope it won't be the only conversation. I think there'll be many, many more that you'll have with other people and with yourselves. So where shall I start? Let me start at this.
I'm so sorry, I just have to say this because it just came to my mind. I must say, I've never felt so comfortable talking about this subject, and I feel it's because I'm really in such a safe, beautiful environment, and that reflects on me on how I have to really get rid of my insecurity about talking about race and issues with white people. That's coming from me, and that's something that I have to become more aware and more educated in myself to do. But this has been such an incredible experience to really feel 100% comfortable, and my armpits are not sweaty, and I'm really, really feel comfortable, and I've gained so much insight as well to all of you, and I feel like that I'm so thankful for this, and to talk to you as well. I haven't seen in a while.
I think it's nice as well, the energy and the passion when everyone's speaking. I think I'm definitely gonna come away with this with a bit more not a bit more, but definitely the motive to kind of keep pushing this, and that fire to that this is an amazing time for everyone, and like you were saying, things are changing, and we should definitely just keep pushing it with all of our strength, definitely.
Marianna, what will you take away?
I think the biggest thing for me also, as a young person, not to be afraid to speak out loud and just express my true feelings and my thoughts, and maybe some of it will be useful and people will find it interesting, and not to be afraid to share with the others, just like we did today. And it was amazing and incredible. Just calmly sit down and just say what you have to say.
Francesca.
I'd just like to say I didn't actually realise how much I needed this. I've done a lot of interviews now, I think, and I've always shied away from talking about race. It's something, and even just in social situations, whenever the topic of race comes up, I get a bit awkward because I know that everyone's looking at me, you know, for a reaction from me, and I'm there to judge what's appropriate and what's not. So now I feel really confident to be in those situations, how I'm going to handle them in the future. I feel backed up now by so many more people. And also I've already seen a change for me. I love fashion. I've already seen a change in working in fashion, like looking in my magazines and stuff. I've started to see more people that look like me, and I know earlier I said that I grew up in a very sort of a world where I was looking at white ballerinas and that I didn't notice my race, but now I'm seeing the diversity there. I'm also realizing that I need it, and I didn't realize that until now because I'm seeing it. So I just think this is a really powerful change, and I'm really excited.
Excellent. Joseph.
I think I really want to just take this safe space that we have now into life and challenge people and speak up when things are wrong, and not be afraid to communicate with each other and share each other's stories. And like I said, I feel like I've learned a lot about other people's perspectives and yours, and I honestly, a win for these guys is a win for me always. So I just want to take this now into the world and like keep going with it, not just let it be, you know, Black History Month or a month that we talk about this, or an event. Like it's a real thing, and you know, like you said, racism exists, and it's horrible. But the more we talk about it, the more we challenge people, the more we speak up when something is not right, or you hear something, or the more change is going to happen. So, yeah.
Mr. Sissens.
I think I'm just very proud to be brown. I'll try not to. I'm getting a little bit, but I think just our community is just so incredible and so resourceful, and we've come back through so much, and I feel like all of our brown brothers and sisters out there are with us today, and they live on in us. And just our community, just even sitting across from Marcelino, and like I remember when I joined the company and he like completely took me under his wing, and that's our community, you know. You see someone with a similar experience and you take care of them, and I feel very supported. And I hope, especially Marianna, now you're very young and at the start of your career, but like our community is so beautiful, and we got you completely.
Yeah.
Well, I'm getting emotional just listening to you. I want to thank you all for giving your time, your thought, your energy, your passion. You know, what you do on a day-to-day basis just as dancers is extraordinary anyway. You know, you're all at the top of your game. But then to do that as well as being a human being and dealing with the kind of things you've had to deal with in the last 7 months, I take my hat off to you. I couldn't ever have imagined sitting in the Opera House having this particular conversation with a group of dancers such as yourselves. So it's giving me real hope for the future, listening to your passion, how articulate you are, how thoughtful you are. Keep going. Keep going. It's a journey. And as Marcelino was saying earlier, you know, your life as a dancer is short and precious. So finding the ways to support each other to make the best of every moment of that is so important. Thank you for those of you who spent time listening to this conversation. I hope it's been of interest to you. I think that's where we're going to sign off with a big thank you. Thank you for joining us.